To you, not to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Couples in Conversation. We are so excited that you joined us today. If this is your first time joining our channel, please like, comment, and subscribe to the page. I will tell you that you are in for a treat today. Today, we are going to be talking about control, how that is defined in a relationship, what it looks like in relationships, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Before we get started, I would love to introduce our panel. We have Jennifer James, which is my wife. We have Dem Crawfords, Erica, and Jonathan. We have Fowler Nation, Toylise, and Michael. And then we have our anniversaries. We have the Green Machine, Christina and Jason. You guys just celebrated how many years? 7, 6, 7?
Yes, 7 years.
7 years. That's super exciting. What do you guys have? What would you call this year that you guys just come through? If you had to give it a theme, what would that theme be?
Man, this year, personally, this year for us has been good, but with COVID hanging over everyone's head, it's hard to really, have something nice and enjoyable to say. COVID has done a lot, has ripped through a lot of families. And so, that alone, it's just hard to say something positive. But for us, for our own personally for us, it's been a great year for us, I think.
Yeah, we had some ups and downs, but I mean, other than that, it's been pretty steady with the relationship wise, so keeping us close.
Giving it a theme though, like an actual word would be
like Stormy Hill.
What?
Stormy Hill.
Unpredictable. How about that?
Unpredictable. Expect the unexpected. Well, happy anniversary to you both. I'm very excited to have you guys. We wish you 7 more years and 7 more after that. All right. So our topic for today, we are going to talk about control. And I'm very excited to have this because this is a conversation that I think usually sparks a lot of debate within relationships. It's something that I know is talked about pretty often. So this is what we're going to be discussing. How do you define control in a relationship, and why is it always negatively viewed? When people say he's controlling or she's controlling or that's controlling, yada, 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 it's usually attached to something negative. So we want to define what people think control is, and we want to talk about why it is negatively viewed. And we are going to start with Dem Crawfords. So Erica, take us away.
Hey, everybody. So my definition of control, I would say that control is basically influencing the other with force. That's what I would say that control is. It's like you're forcing someone to do or to adhere to, certain things that you want them to adhere to. So that's what I would say my definition of control in a relationship is. It's like you're telling a person what they can and cannot do. And it's not necessarily a compromise or a discussion. It's just more of forcing that person to say, like, hey, you're going to do what I tell you to do, period.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree. As far as controlling relationship, I agree with what she said. And control is tricky because there's different types of control in a relationship. You got some control that comes off very aggressive and mean, but if you got some control that sometimes that the person don't even know that they're being controlled and that they are. In my relationship, I'm not going to say that Erica tries to be controlling, but Erica is very upfront. She know what she wants. She know what she's looking for. So to her, it may not come off as controlling. I don't take it as controlling. I mean, I kind of like it sometimes when she kind of push me around a little bit. I let her know when she get when it's getting too much, I'll let her know I'm still king. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's different. All depends on how you take it, because some people can be able to take direction and it's not control. Me personally, I can take direction and it's not control, but it all depends on going too much. I'm not a controlling type person. I mean, of course, Erica's gonna do what I tell her to do. That's not control. That's just me being king of the house. What I want done or what it needs to be done, I want it to be done, and it's not me controlling her. It's just the point. This is I'm running this. So, but yeah, I'll have more to say later. But yeah, I'm king.
Okay, we heading over to Fowler Nation.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My definition of control is any kind of manipulation, whether it's, upfront or subliminally, that you use or you put in action that makes, well, not necessarily make, but that persuades somebody to do something that they ordinarily would not do. And to pretty much, like Jonathan was saying, make what you say law, even when nobody else agrees with what you're doing. Or he said something like that. I don't know. Michael.
I agree with what Erica and Torlise said. Erica said it forcefully. Torlise added the manipulation side of it. I think both ways can be used as control. It's where you make the other person feel as if they don't have the option of doing anything else. And then part of the manipulation is, well, some people do use the example that I'm king. A lot of times. And then some people say, well, if you love me, that's what you would do. So it's just, that's where the manipulation comes in. And then
that's not manipulation, that's just making a statement.
No, that's manipulation. That people can take that as manipulation and be persuaded because they feel a certain kind of way about that relationship, that I have to do this to let them know that I love them and stuff like that. So that's a form of control, like you said.
That's love, that's not control.
So, yes, amen.
All right, heading over to the green machine.
So I too agree with E and Toy about their definition of control. I definitely think it's when you're forcefully making someone do something and making them feel like, as Michael said, that they do not have an option. I also agree with Michael when he said the manipulation part. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes people really do not know that they're being controlled. It's a way of life for them in their relationship. That's how it's been from the beginning. So they don't even realize it until sometimes an outside party come in and have to kind of put it in their face for them. Like, listen, this is not how two adults coexist in a relationship. So for me personally in my relationship, I did feel, I guess I had it, I don't really know, but I may have had it a little mixed up in the beginning. In the beginning of our relationship, I really did feel like, Jay was controlling. That he always wanted a say in what I was doing. But I think I kind of mixed up controlling with just his natural aggressiveness. Like, Jason is naturally aggressive, not in a negative way, but he is naturally, or more so just stern. Like, this is what I want. This is my turn.
But you trying to make something with Pitbull or something?
No,
like that.
but this is my turn.
Get out of here.
So, as I said in the beginning, I thought that he was super mad controlling, but like, I don't know if it was Jonathan or somebody said, or she said about Eve, she knew what she wanted, and that's kind of how Jason was. He knew what he wanted in a wife or in a woman in the beginning. And for me, I felt like it was controlling, but really it was just what he wanted and what he expected. And I had the choice to deal with it or not. you know. And so I think in the beginning I did kind of use that control word, like, you controlling, I can't do this, I can't do that, you got something to say about this, you don't want me waiting tables, you know. But really it was just what he, you know, what he wanted in his relationship, and if I didn't want to deal with it, I didn't have to.
Okay, Jason.
I think I think it's the difference between like being in control of a certain situation, like say for instance, certain things in a household. Not both people usually aren't in control of the finances. Usually it's one person in control of the finance. You know, most people in a relationship, the man is in control of the trash, the woman is control over such and such. And I mean, it's not necessarily gender bias, but usually someone in that relationship is control over some aspect or different aspects of the relationship. Now, controlling, I think it's like kind of like a double-edged sword, where it could be the way that the person views it. Because if you view it, and this is my preference, and you automatically give me a rebuttal or you fighting with me, then you haven't. I mean, it's no guarantee that you've actually considered it in the big picture, rather than it being okay, you're controlling. And a lot of times, in my experience, a lot of women feel like they're being controlled. When a man has a preference, he has not a demand, but he has a requirement or whatever the case may be. And at the same time, they exhibit that same behavior, but if it's on them, it's controlling. And I think that's what we struggle with a lot of times, where it was okay for her to control me in certain ways, or her to be pushy or bossy. But she didn't like it when it was back on her. And I would literally tell her certain scenarios and give her certain examples. Like, literally, I did A, B, and C, and you've done X, Y, and Z. So what's the difference? How can you get offended by it? And as time went on, she started to understand, like, oh, I see what he's saying. And then I gave her certain instances where she was like, oh, I can see how you could feel controlled, or that I was being bossy or pushy. And I can see how you could say it's no difference between what you say and what I say. It's based off of how I take and how I interpret it. And it wasn't a situation I was barking down the throat like, "Arr, arr, arr," and expecting her to be like, you know what? I see your point. Nah, it wasn't like that. I would give her a certain scenario or a certain, example to try to let her know where I'm coming from. I never was, that, and that's one of the reasons why we had so much of a conflict. Because I'd be like, I'm coming to you and I'm explaining something to you. And sometimes people can look at control and take offense to it. But a lot of times, if it's coming from a good place and it's for your best interest, that controlling could be constructive criticism. It could be so many different things, but it's based off of how you take it. And she's grown to be a lot better in that respect.
Okay.
So I don't know, I'm kind of everywhere with this topic. I feel like I agree with a lot of what you guys have said about controlling being a forceful action or behavior or conversation to make someone feel like they have to do something that they may not necessarily want to do. But I feel like a lot of times we always take the negative connotation, and there is actually a positive connotation to it as well. And I think that also goes back to the different generations. So like if you look at old school generation, it was like more family values, it was like being there as a partner. And now the new generation is more independent. And I think that we're struggling to kind of meet in the middle, because as women, like now we're going to be, you have to be independent, you have to be able to take care of yourself. But in the back of our mind, we're still like, oh, well, we want a spouse, we want a partner. But when we get into that partnership, it's kind of hard for us to transition our mindset to, this is my partner and he's not controlling if he's taking over the role in which I sought him out for. But at the end of the day, that independence me, or even my girlfriends or my family, kind of feeds into that desire to be independent. And it's like a constant battle within ourselves. And then like me and Frank was kind of talking about the idea of controlling a situation versus controlling a person. So like a pilot has control over the plane. You willingly got on the plane, but you know that now that you have gotten to the plane, now that you're in this marriage, you do have to listen to the pilot because they're in control of the situation. You gave them that control by buying that ticket. And so at any point they can say, seatbelts on, you can't move around the cabin. And you listen to that because you don't want to get thrown off the plane. You want to make this easy travel. But when we get into relationships, even though we said, okay, my husband takes care of the trash, or my husband makes all the money and I do the finance, or even if y'all have split it down the middle, I still want to have a say in what I gave him. But women and men have very different mentalities, ways of life. And so how I would do finances is different than how Frank would do finances. And if I gave it over to him, I can't be mingling in it and get mad at him because he's not doing it the way that I want. And so I think that it has a lot to do with identifying the roles and being within that role, and then also the delivery of what is being put out there, the behavior, or even like what they're saying.
Thanks, babe. I 100% agree with what my wife just said. One thing that I always hear when it's in relationships is every single time we talk about control, it is always negative. I have never heard control spoken about with any kind of positivity whatsoever, when in actuality, control is good. You need control. And not every situation you can have more than one person in control. Because if you are in a vehicle and you're driving and then the passenger tries to take control of the vehicle, there's going to be an accident. And it's going to end up bad for everybody in the vehicle. So there are times when you have to just kind of step back, take that passenger seat and take that and just let it ride. Because when somebody is in control of something, so it may look like I am doing this for my personal pleasure. I am doing this because I said so, but you don't see what that person sees. You can't always see, one thing, Jennifer tells me about a lot is she has this idea and she wants, control to be taken, but she still wants to have a voice. She still wants to know what's going on. So a lot of time I would just go and do something because it's something that I heard that she said that she wanted. And then she was just like, why don't I know what's going on? And I'm like, well, you told me to handle it. So I've handled it. And she's like, well, that doesn't mean that I'm not your partner still. That just means that you handling that situation. So I'm coming to you, Jason, because I see your hand. And I want, after Jason goes, I want to talk about what it looks like to be in control and still include the thoughts, the opinions, the desires of your counterpart. Because while it's still important, there are some times that they just don't see everything that you see and you have to make a decision. So how do you make that decision without making them feel like they have no say? Go ahead, Jason.
You want me to answer that? Because you want me to answer that?
No, you had your hand up.
No, I was about to say that's a good point that Jennifer stated with regard to how our generation is. And a lot of times when I dated other women, especially in the beginning and still now, there's always a pushback. And sometimes I'm thinking in my head, like I go and press rewind in my brain, like, what did I say? And I noticed that certain things, certain keywords that she would pick out.
I could tell you what to say.
No, you couldn't. No. And then I repeat it, and I'm like, well, how'd you get this out of that? And then the light bulb comes up over her head, and she'd be like, oh, you didn't mean that? Well, she didn't even let me finish the statement. So a lot of times, I think in some people's minds, it has such a negative connotation. Any constructive criticism and controlling a lot of times involves constructive criticism. And a lot of that is based off of, for me personally, it's based off of experience. I won't ever tell you anything or give you any advice based off of a lack of experience. That's just not how I am. And that's how I address my relationship. And I think that a lot of that is based on growth. And that's, to Jennifer's point, a lot of that is based on understanding what's going on and who you really are. Because if it's a situation where it helps you and it doesn't jeopardize your morals, it doesn't jeopardize, who you are and your core being, then at the end of the day, why not? And a lot of it is basically acquiescing to whatever your spouse is asking you to do. Oh, is she next?
Yeah.
So you said that if it's if it's something that you feel like is going to be helpful or beneficial to the relationship, and why not just go ahead and do it? But what if the person that you are telling that to does not feel like it's beneficial or it's going to help? They may feel like it's not, right? And so then now, but you're pushing this on me, whatever this is, you're pushing it on me. And so now I feel controlled because you feel like it's good and this is what we should do, and I do not, but you're going to push it on me, so that's where you toe the line with control or constructive criticism, as you like to say, or
Are you talking to me? Because you're looking at me, or are you talking?
No, I'm just saying. I'm speaking
Facebook
to
land.
the.
Okay, Facebook land. Okay. I'm about to say.
I'm just saying, just because you feel like something may be good or you should do this, does not mean the person who you are talking to feel the same way. So if I feel like it's not, and I say, well, no, I don't really want to do that, and you're forcing it on me, now I feel controlled. That is a form of control. But once I've already said that, no, I don't think that's a good idea, because I am an adult, or whoever is an adult. Once I've already said, like, no, I don't think that this is a good idea, I think this is a better one for me, then you kind of should just let it be. Whoever. I'm not speaking about you, babe.
Okay.
I'm just saying whoever.
You sounding real speaking about me-ish. Go ahead.
Fine, thanks. I'm coming to you, Toylise, but even in that situation, Christina, that's a great point that you bring up, and we're going to use that for our rapid fire question. So I'm going to ask this question, and we're going to go around the room, and I would love for everybody to take 60 seconds to answer this question, and I'm starting with you, Toylise, because I saw your hand. When does something become, if your spouse tells you, I see this situation and this is how I see it, this can be a problem, so we need to do this, and your spouse responds with, no, I don't really agree with that, I don't think we should do that because that doesn't really sound like a good idea to me, and then the spouse that came up with the suggestion then says, no, this is what we need to do, is that controlling, one? And if it is, how do you navigate that situation? Because at some point, you got to make a decision, because a decision has to be made, because we have to move forward. So what do you do in that situation when that comes up? And I'm saying, I'm looking at the 10,000 foot view, but you're looking at the 25 foot view. We're looking at the same picture from different vantage points. How do you deal with that? Toylise, starting with you.
Well, number one, for Fallen Nation, it depends on what the situation is. Because if there's something going on, and Michael, like, Toy, I really think we should do it this way, even if I don't agree with it, once you state the facts and I hear exactly what's going on and I'm able to understand the situation, while I may not necessarily agree with what you're saying, you may be a little bit more involved, or you may understand the situation a little more in depth than I do. And I'm just coming in as a person, well, you're just now telling me this, and I'm supposed to make a quick decision, which may be contrary to what you're saying. But can it be controlling? Can that type of situation turn into controlling? I would say yes. Case in point, the other day, my husband had washed some clothes, and I had something in the dryer that I wanted, but when he pulled it out the dryer initially, it was not completely dry. So he put the items back in the dryer, but that one particular item, I wanted it. So I told Jayla to go get it, which is my oldest daughter. I told her to go get it for me. And on her way to bringing it to me, she got sent back to the dryer. Even though she tried to explain to her father, Mama said, get this and bring it to her. But because it was not dry to his satisfaction, he intercepted my command, totally disregarded it, and told her to take it back to the dryer. In my opinion, that is a form of control, because just because I do not agree with what you are saying, and that's very small and very minute compared to some of the things that other people in marriages deal with, but we don't necessarily have that problem. But it depends on the situation.
Okay, Michael.
And he about to lie, FYI.
It depends on the situation. When it comes to figuring out who's doing what, first of all, if that's what you want to do, I have a suggestion. You can take it, but usually I'm like, okay, there are things that Twilisa are better at taking care of. There are things that I'm better at taking care of. Now, we can give suggestions, but at the end of the day, listen, what you do the best you can. Know that it affects me too, and it affects our 5 kids. So
I told you was about to lie.
No, I'm not lying. If it's not a good outcome, hey, that's your fault, but we'll have to work it out together at that point in time. But just know that I told you so. That's it.
Patty.
All right, Erica. You're muted.
Better?
Yes.
Yep. So I would have to agree. It definitely just depends on the situation. It's a situational thing, so I can't really give a response of how it can be handled. However, I will say I'm more of a what's the word I want to say? I'm more of a strong-minded person, so it will take a lot to change my thought process. Like I'm trying to get better. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm definitely trying to get better to listen to what the other, what Jonathan has to say, instead of always just saying no, it needs to go this way. I am trying to be better at that. I'm one of the ones, like you were just saying, like in the driver's seat. I'm the one, in the passenger seat pushing down on the brake, or stuff like that. I'm really just headstrong. If I have what I feel like is right for me, I'm not just going to change it just because you tell me that this is the way it should be. No, I need to understand the facts. Like Toli said, I need to understand exactly what is your point, what is your reasoning, before you can change my mind and make me try to go down the route that you want me to go down. So it just takes me a little bit longer because it's just been instilled in me. I've always been the controlled. So it just takes me a little bit longer now that I'm, older, to, relax those, relax the reins and allow people to, think that it just always feels like control to me because that's always just been me. I just do whatever somebody tells me to do. But it's a little harder for me to just relax those reins now, but I am trying to be better in our relationship and not allow, how I handle things in the past affect how I'm going now and in the future.
All right, Jonathan.
Was there a new question? I had to leave for a minute because I'm cooking at the same time, so I apologize.
The question that we're discussing now this is our rapid fire question. How do you deal with the situation where you bring something up on a decision that needs to be made and your spouse responds with, no, I don't agree with that, but you see more and you're like, this is something that I think we really need to do. How do you handle that situation, and is that control?
Yeah. In my situation, I think I handle it well, because like Erica said, she's a very strong-minded person, and it's hard to really change anything that she say, or if she's going to change anything, we're going to argue about it for a while before it's changed. Erica she's a passenger driver. She's always in the passenger seat, but she's driving. Even though I'm the one with the wheel in my hand, Erica is the one who thinks she's driving all the time. So, and I deal with it. And a lot of times I know how she is and I understand how she is. And I came up pretty much not having the upbringing that she did. So I kind of listen to a lot of the stuff that she say, because I didn't have it, I didn't hear it, I didn't see it growing up. So even though I'm driving, sometimes I let her have the second steering wheel in the passenger seat. Do I think it's controlling? No, I don't think it's controlling. It's just her. And I know my wife, so I don't think it's controlling, and I deal with it.
All right, the Greens.
Hope I got some points.
I don't think you can. I had the same reaction Jonathan had. I thought I had what I was going to say, but I don't think it's a situation where I think it's an understanding. Okay, say for instance, I'm the one that has them. And the way I look at it is not the person that has control has the most experience, but in every situation calls for, different types of, you move in different ways in different relationships. Different situations. And if I so happen to have more experience in my mind, how it works for me, it makes more sense to listen to me because I have more experience in that situation. Christina basically handles the finances. So when she gives me a suggestion, or when she tells me, okay, well, let's take this from over here, or okay, well, this big purchase of $2,000 or $3,000, we can't make it this time because we're trying to save for this and we're trying to, so that's not, in my opinion, I guess some people on the outside looking in will look at that as controlling, but that's why I said it's a difference between having control and being controlling. She's control over the finances. A lot of our money is tied up together. So it makes more sense and it's beneficial to the family. So if she tells me something that might be contrary to what I want to purchase at that time, I listen. And it's not, and she'll tell you it's no pushback because it's like, okay, well, you pay attention to the finances and you pay attention to the bills and you've been balancing this. So you make more sense now. So why wouldn't I listen to it? And I think a lot of times it's about the person's growth and maturity level, because if you're immature, it's easy for you to always take offense to something when it's against what you say or how you feel. And the way I look at situations, I can care less about feelings. It's about what makes more sense. Yeah, I say. And overall, if it benefits the family, then that's what I care about, because at the end of the day, that's our nugget. That's what we created. So if it's beneficial for the family, then that's something that the decision has to be prudent for the family. It can't be something that you just saying, okay, well, I want to do it just because I feel like it. And sometimes I've seen that. So she's getting a little bit better with it, and we have a lot less issues because of that. And I think one of the things that if a person has a problem with it, I think a lot of things that from a man's standpoint, which can be a little bit overly aggressive or overly controlling, depending on, how she feels about it. I think giving certain things or saying certain things with a spoonful of honey rather than vinegar can make it a little bit easier for a person to understand your point of view.
So I agree with Jay, and I kind of agree with E. It really just depends on the situation. Typically, Jason might disagree, but I am kind of like I can be easygoing for the most part. It's kind of, I can be easygoing, but I also can be a little bit bossy. I can be. That's a contradiction right there. I can be both of those things. I know it's weird, but I can't be both of those things. So it really just depends on the situation. Where Jason and I bump heads, like he said, if you are more knowledgeable in a situation, Jason feels like he's more knowledgeable in every situation when it comes between he and I.
That's where lies come in.
Babe, he feels like because yes, he's lived life. Yes, I grew up with a very strict mom where I didn't get to do much. So I didn't live the kind of, I didn't have this carefree, live open life like he may have had. So he just feel like you don't have any experience. I hear that a lot. Well, you don't have any experience. Well, what do I have experience in? Because everything, it seems like he always like, you don't got experience, so let me handle it. So it really just depends on the situation. At some points I do become bossy because I just feel like, well, when am I gonna make a decision? I don't know.
That's a lie.
I don't know. It really just depends on the situation. It really, really, really just depends on the situation.
All right, go ahead.
I think that in general is not controlling. However, I think that it can become controlling by your presentation. And then also it's the process of it. So like you said, you had an idea of this is how we should do it. I came back to you and I told you, no, this is what I think should go, but then you just made a decision. Were you really listening to me, or did you just hear me? So if you just heard me and you were just going to do what you wanted to do anyways, I feel like that's kind of what leans it more towards controlling. You weren't really looking at the partnership level, because even though I may not have all the answers or I may not have the experience, what I say may tweak a little bit of what you're doing. Even though you're making the decision, I may say, maybe you should go this route. You're still getting to the destination what you wanted, but you skipped over a pebble or over a hill or something like that. So I think that it is important to still get your partner's viewpoint of the situation, but at the same time, within my household, for the most part, we're kind of partners and everything, but at the end of the day, in the back of my mind, I still put him as the head. And so we have conversations, I put my input, but at the end of the day, I trust and believe that he's following after Christ and that he's going to make the best decision for my household, and I trust in that. However, there are some things, like Jason said, I have more experience in, or I have more insight in, and I do have to let it be known, like, this is going to lead to destruction. Like, some things, okay, you don't want to listen, we're probably going to stumble. I'll just make sure that I got your back. At the end of the day, I got your back. We're going to fall, we're going to stumble. I'm your partner. You're going to make mistakes. I'm not going to say ha in your face because it involves both of us. But sometimes if I feel like, no, this is detrimental, then I'm going to stick to my guns. Like, we really need to do this. And this is why A, B, and C. I'm not just going to say we have to do this because I said so. I feel like that's where immaturity comes in.
So I want to, and the time is winding, and I already know one of these things that I want to say is going to cause an uproar. So I want to, two things I want to do. Thank you guys so much for your comments. We see them, they're coming in. One of our panelists that's actually absent today left a comment, and I want to talk about it a little bit. She asked the question, what is the difference between leading and controlling? And I want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like although these two words should not be used interchangeably, I believe that people use them interchangeably. I don't believe that leadership and control are the same. I think leading, when you are leading something, that is, you have the knowledge, the wisdom, and the ability to move a task, a situation, a decision, and you have all of the gift to make that progress. Controlling is when you think you have the tenacity, but you don't really have that. So I think that that's where, and controlling also comes in, I believe, when you misuse leadership. So some leaders can be controlling, and you can misuse your position as a leader and then become controlling. But I don't think they're the same. What are some of you guys' thoughts about that? Because I hear a lot, even in the workplace, I have had some managers that I would work for them again. And then I had some managers that were bosses that I was like, I would never, because you cannot, you have to be able to separate leadership from controlling, because a good leader never has to say, I'm a leader, never has to say, you're going to listen to me, or you're going to do this because I said you're going to do it. You are showing me, you are doing this job. You are providing an example. You are showing me that you are a good steward of your position, and I naturally am just going to follow that. Bosses or people that control, they don't do that. So what are some of your thoughts about that? I saw your hand, Erica. Go ahead.
So I totally agree with you 1,000% with your comment. I do think that there is a difference. Leadership is basically being that example. I've always taken the notion that if I'm a leader, I always look at Jesus as the example. And the reason being is because although he was a leader, he was still a servant. And that to me is the purpose. When you're in leadership, you're there to serve, meaning you're there to help move whoever you're with, your team, your partner, whoever you're with, you're leading them to move forward in progress. And you have to look at what's best for the entire, not look at what's best for just you. You need to look at what's best for the entire or for the whole. So that's what I think leadership is. And I will, inside of work, my work ethic is a little bit different from where I am at home. And that's something that I'm trying to mesh them two together and get better at that. But when I was a manager, when I was a people manager, I will say, and I can pat myself on the back, you know, my team actually cried when I left because they felt like I was one of the best managers because I was a leader by example. I didn't necessarily try to control them. It's just about us working together as a team. I'll jump in and help you. I'll help you move forward. I'll give you that encouragement. I'll let you know that you're doing a great job, but then be able to give you that constructive criticism to help you, not to tear you down. And a lot of people, when they're controlling, that's what they do. They try to tear you down to get you to move you forward when that's not necessarily going to help the person. If anything, that's going to build more, they'll build more resentment towards you because you're trying to, you know, push me negatively instead of trying to encourage me to help me move forward. So I think that's kind of like my take on it. I think, like I said, a leader is there, someone who is to lead by example and also to serve. And a controller is basically looking out for what their best interest is for themselves and not for the entire picture.
All right, go ahead, Jennifer.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you guys said. Yeah, I think a lot of times a person becomes controlling because of the desire for power. And so kind of what Erica was talking about as far as like the controller is dehumanizing the individual or breaking them down. But it also is a cycle. Like I break you down now, you're eventually going to listen to what I say, and then you're also going to depend on me. So I'm just continuously building that power over you and over any relationship or any situation in which that we have. And so it's kind of hard to get someone who is controlling, who does not view themselves as controlling or does not view it as a bad thing, to come out of that. But then I also feel like when it comes to leadership, the reason why we have so many issues and we identify people as controlling versus leadership, or we mix up the two, is because we don't have that training aspect. A lot of people were not trained to be leaders. So as we grow up, we see the people around us. And a few of you have said, and even I've said, like growing up, I didn't necessarily see the example of what I wanted to be, but I seen an example of some sort. And even though I may not have liked it, I still followed it to a certain extent. And so if you didn't grow up around a leader, how do you develop that leadership, those leadership skills? And then how do you also teach your offsprings to be leaders? And so we're all just trying to fight for what the idea of leadership really looks like. And I like the example of that Erica gave as far as like she looks at Jesus as the ultimate leader. And that is awesome, but it kind of sucks that our only example of leadership is from thousands of years ago. Like we should have leaders walking around us and you should be able to rightly identify them and be able to build up those skills within yourself. And I think that that's where we fail a lot of times, is because we don't have those examples.
Thank you, babe. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I think it's a lot of it is based off of growth, because when you have two people coming from two different lifestyles, two different families, what makes sense to them in the beginning, as they grow older, a lot of times if it's the proper growth and maturity, it doesn't necessarily make sense. It might not make sense as they go along and as they mature. I think one of the things that when I just basically, talking about it out loud or, listen to everybody else, I think one of the things that I made a mistake in the beginning was taking the fact that she was so inexperienced and not necessarily taking advantage of it. But I took that as, okay, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and you can admit you don't know what you're talking about. So unequivocally, you should just listen to me no matter what. And when you look at the broader spectrum, it doesn't necessarily make the person feel good. And a lot of times the person can take that as belittling. And so as a man, especially how we're viewed, because women, especially in our community, see instruction from a man and put a negative connotation on it because of things that they've heard in society. Media tells them, I got to be a strong Black woman. I got to do this. I got to do that. And to Jennifer's point, which, her first comment, that is some things that I struggle with, and I've always struggled with in, women I was dealing with before I got married. And that's something that I know when I speak to other men, they express that same issue as an issue in their marriage or in their relationship. But I think it still has to be a balance on the male side with regard to how we are viewed already, to understand how am I going to present this information to her. So it takes concerted effort on both people's parts in order to deliver the information properly, and this also has to be received properly also. So I have to be cognizant of her feelings, and she has to be cognizant of my direction and my headship, and not necessarily saying I won't listen to her, but if it makes sense and it's good for the gander, then it's good for everyone. You know, what's good for the goose is good for everyone. So I think a lot of it takes growth, and initially in the fledgling stages of a relationship, may be a marriage or just a dating relationship. I think that's something that, you know, both people, you know, usually struggle with. And I think that's just what it is. It takes some honesty, and it takes a lot of growth on both people's parts.
I agree with you. I'm coming to you, Jennifer. I just wanted to say this real quick. So one thing that Jennifer, you talked about really quickly, you talked about training and having that example, and Erica kind of brought this up. I think another huge misconception that we have is when we look at things that happen and we look at situations that happen in life, we always see bad examples. And I believe what we do when we see a bad example is we say, oh, I'm going to do the exact opposite because I know that was a bad example, so the opposite has to be a good example. But that's not always true. Sometimes the real leadership and effective leadership lies somewhere in the middle. And I think when you automatically totally reverse and just say, I'm going to do the opposite of that, and I'm just going to start here, that is where you get into a situation where you have two people that it's almost evil on both sides, because you're too far left, this person is too far right, when the best place that you really need to get great results from is somewhere in the middle. So I believe that is a misconception that we make all the time. And this is something that I say it a lot. I had enough bad examples that I got to be perfect. And I'm noticing that I make mistakes every day, every year, every moment. And for a while I was just like, how do I not have this when I have all of the bad examples? But it takes that effective leadership to be able to ascertain and say, you know what? That was a bad example, but let me also look at the other extreme to that, and then let me make a better decision and not just going with the opposite, because the opposite is not always where you want to be. So I just want to put it out there. Go ahead, babe.
So what I was gonna say kind of goes with what you were saying. Well, two things. One, I think that a lot of times, the idea of someone being controlling is misconstrued because of the individual's past. And so if you were in a past relationship where you felt like you were always controlled, if you're in a new relationship now and your man tells you to do something, or your woman tells you to do something, if you have not healed from that place, if you have not matured, if you have not dealt with those feelings, a lot of time you're going to attach that to controlling versus this person being different and just trying to navigate a new relationship and provide guidance or instruction within their role. And so I think that sometimes because of our immaturity, or because we have not healed from past things, we subconsciously bring in bad blood or bad baggage, and controlling goes with that. And then secondly, what you were saying, it's kind of something that we discussed off camera last week about the two different generations or the two different spectrums when it comes to children. So older, or even when we were growing up, you know, we didn't really have a voice in our household. Like, you got beat for everything, you couldn't ask questions, you couldn't do anything. And then now, not everyone, but a lot of times in the new age, it's like kids get to say whatever they want, like everyone has a voice, it's like blah 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 blah. But because we grew up in that age, or some of us grew up with that, we're like, no, I want my kids to be able to express themselves, I want to know what they're thinking because I remember how I felt. And again, two evils, two different spectrum, and we need to learn to meet in the middle. But because going back to healing in our past trauma, because we haven't healed from our childhood, or we haven't repaired those relationships with our parents, we can't even figure out what the middle is, or we've allowed it to go so long that we can't even rein our children back in because we gave them too much voice. It's good to give children voices because they do have feelings, they do have emotions, but you still have to tell them how to express those appropriately, how to still have respect for elders, even if you have something that you need to say or something is hurting you. You still don't cuss an elder out. That's still not appropriate. But again, we're on two different spectrums, and we need to figure out what the middle ground looks like.
So, Toylise, I'm coming to you first. I want to ask this question, and we are nearing the end of the hour. So I want to ask this question, and this question is going to be for the wives that we have on the line. Toylise, then Erica, then Christina, then Jennifer, in that order. I want to know why, and this is a very broad, so don't say that's broad, blah, blah, blah. It is very broad and it's very general, but I want you to answer this question. I have heard you guys say, and even in the comments that I'm reading here on Facebook, everybody is saying in a marriage, leadership is needed. You need a leader. The man is the leader, all of those things. What I want to know is if the man, if your spouse is the headship or the priest or the king in your home and he's leading your home, why is it never a, babe, this is what we're doing, okay, let's do it? There is 99 times out of 100, there is always a rebuttal. There is always a something. Why is it never, if you trust our leadership, why is it never, I'm rolling with it. I'm rolling with you. The order is Toylise, Erica, Christina, Jennifer. Toylise, ready? And we're at the end of the hour.
Okay, so first of all, that you done almost made me speechless, because first of all, let me see how I can put this in words. That will, to me, that is not a partnership. Even though you are the man, and yes, I will step aside and, you know, do the things that I need to do as your helpmeet. But for my husband to say, Toy, this is what we doing, and then I say, oh, okay, it all depends. There are times where Michael have said, this is what we're doing, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then there are other times when he say, Toy, this is what it is, and I'm like, yeah, nah, this is something that needs to be discussed before it is what it is. So that, I'm not gonna, I don't agree with your statistic, which is 99% of the time, but I will say a strong 80. Because number one, I've never been a get along type of person. I am me, myself, and my cousin Erica. We are definitely a lot alike in that aspect, because when you are a strong-minded person, people can mistake that as rebellious, but it's not rebellious. It's just that I need to be a part of this decision making, because like my husband said before, it not only affects you, but it affects me. And something that affects me, Toylise gonna have a say in, period.
Thank you, reclaiming your time. Go ahead, Erica.
So again, it's situational. I'm not gonna sit here and say that every situation I have just flat out like, oh no, we're not doing that. No, it is situational. It depends on the situation. And then I will say that it depends on growth as well. There was a time when, to be honest, Jonathan was not the best leader. So that was early on in our marriage. So if he was not the best leader, and again, that goes back to the examples that he had, if he didn't have the appropriate examples to show him what he needs, he just wasn't the best leader at that time. However, he has grown, and I'm relaxing just a little bit. You know, I'm not even going to lie. I'm relaxing a little bit, and I'm allowing him to take on those leadership roles. So again, I do not agree with your statistic, because there are some changes being made over here in them Crawford's household, and Erica is relaxing a little bit and allowing the leadership, because as long as I'm seeing the potential, then of course I don't have a problem with it. Lead me, baby. Take me wherever you want me to go. But as long as I see the potential and you are actually doing what you need to do, and I feel like Jonathan is growing more, not only as far as like that leadership with just being a better husband, being a better father, and I owe that all to him basically finding himself in Christ, and with him doing that, it's making him a better leader. So that allows me to be okay to accept some things. But don't get it twisted. If it is something that I need to kind of poke in a little bit to say, hold on a second, let me think about this, then there will be times for that. But I think he's getting better, so I'm learning to relax a little bit.
Thank you. Go ahead, Christina.
I'd have to agree with Toy. I don't agree with your statistic that whatever percent you said is unheard of. But I feel like for me, I do sit back and let Jay take the lead for the most part. And like he said, as long as I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, then I'm good to let you lead. But if you trying to lead me into darkness and then darkness and then darkness, and I don't even see where you're going with this, then I might have a little bit of something to say. And you being the head, you should be able to take that info and not feel like it's being hit with a rebuttal or I got something to say. You should feel like you should be happy that I'm trying to figure out where this is going.
It doesn't happen like that. But
I want to say though, Christina, to your point, you said you are leading me into as long as I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you're
always see light at the end.
First of all, if you are in a partnership with someone and you feel like they are leading you into darkness, you're in the wrong partnership. So you should be led into darkness.
Yeah, again, it's situational, because it's been times where somebody has said something and I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. And then once I gave my 2 or 3 cents, possibly things have changed. He may be like, okay, yeah, you're right, babe. So
you're talking about like a different relationship. You're not talking about us. Okay, that's cool. Go ahead, babe. I thought you were talking about us, because I ain't never happened.
So what I'm saying is, if I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I don't have a zip. My mouth is, what's that emoji with the zipper? It's zip shut. But if I can see the light, because if you know where you're going, if you're leading me, you know where you're going, I should know too. Period. I don't see what's wrong with that. I don't see anything that's wrong with that.
On an airplane, only the pilot can see where you're going.
Okay, but this ain't an airplane. This is a whole relationship where both people need to know where they're going. I get that example, but it ain't working for right here, right now.
Thank you. Reclaiming your time. Go ahead, babe.
How you gonna reclaim my time when you and Jason took half of my time?
You're not talking nonsense.
I have to agree with the ladies as far as your statistics are off. Case in point, we have moved 50 million times and ain't none of them been my idea, and I kind of just went with the flow. I never questioned it. So to say 98 or 99, that's false. But I think for me, as long as I know that we're not going straight into the ditch, I can follow. But again, how we were talking earlier, I don't know. It's just important that I have I feel like if we go into a ditch, or if we hit something and I could have possibly said something that could have prevented it, not necessarily changed the whole course, like I would feel guilty if we still ran to the ditch and I held my tongue. Now, at the end of the day, I do identify you as the head. And so in most situations, I'll just go with it, but I'm not going to be quiet. And then you get mad at me later. Like, if you've seen this, why didn't you say that? Like, that has been an issue. You've seen it, you didn't say anything. So now I do say stuff. And if it's not detrimental to our relationship or our family, I still let you go. And I think that also goes back to trusting and having faith in my spouse. Because I mean, sometimes it is blind faith. And because even decisions that I would make, I'm not always going to know how it's going to end up. Like, I'm still just making the best educated guess that I can. Like, I just got to go with it. If I'm having this feeling that this is where we should go, and you don't have a concrete plan either, like, you just got to go with it and know that your relationship is strong enough to get you out the ditch if you fall into it. Like, y'all got each other, y'all got skills, work it out.
So this is great, and I knew that was going to start a little upward there. Nobody want to talk about the statistics, but I have the receipts over here.
You definitely don't have a receipt.
Continuing the
you don't have a receipt, but excuse me, I have one more thing I just wanted to add to what Jennifer was saying. Just because we have something to say does not mean that you are not the head or the leader of the family or the priest of the house. It just simply means that there is another opinion that can possibly be valid. Just because you are the head does not mean that solidifies what you're saying and what you're doing as valid and right. Thank you.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just think, and it is my perspective, that sometimes just for the sake of, I want to give my opinion just because, or I'm going to say this because I'm just not going to let you, and I'm not speaking from where my wife is today, because my wife does a phenomenal job, and a lot of times it shocks me, because back in the day, baby, it was not no Frank is saying something and this is what we're doing. It was 17,364 follow-up questions and then 762 follow-ups to the follow-up. It was all of those things, and now she does a phenomenal job with making me think, at least, because she could be doing something behind the scenes I don't know about.
But let me just interject where you're saying it though. Just okay. So yes, back in the day, I had 50 million questions, but you also have to pair with that. Were you a good leader when I had those 50 million questions?
I was not.
I think sometimes that get misconstrued as far as females having 50 million questions or trying to cover her spouse, but you weren't the best leader. And so yes, you're a great leader now, but you also have to realize my position as I had to help you get there. Mm-hmm. And some of my questions helped you get there. You can't deny that fact. I'm not saying that some of the questions that I had wasn't off the wall, wasn't crazy, but I'm saying still acknowledge that fact that you needed help get into your role.
I'm not disputing that at all. I will be the first one to tell you about myself. I was not a good leader. I did make some decisions that were not good family decisions, but I almost feel like if it's a bad decision, look, we don't learn unless we make bad decisions and learn from them, right? So sometimes let me make this bad decision and then let's figure it out together. Jennifer was just like, no. And I'm just like, well, dang, leave her alone.
Because if it can be avoided, why make the bad decision? If it can be avoided, if she just opened her mouth and say something, why make the bad decision?
Because you can't always.
And it don't always come off.
That's what didn't happen. It was not until I made the bad decision and everything fell on me and I had to deal with the consequences, the repercussions, and then the reset up to fix it moving forward that I became a good leader in my family and in my marriage. So her telling me and trying to say it didn't really help. It's kind of like, for example, and we're going over our time, so we have to wrap it up. Isaiah loves to cook. He likes to help. He likes to do all these things. When he was probably around 3 or 4 years old, we were making cookies and he was stirring. He was doing a great job. And I kept telling him, Isaiah, don't touch the stove. The stove is hot. The stove is hot. And he's like, that's hot, Daddy? And I'm like, yes, the stove is hot. He kept putting his hand over there and I pull his hand back. Kept putting his hand over there, I pull it back. Kept putting his hand, pull it back. I turned around for 1 second to pick up something off the floor and he didn't touch it and he burned his hand. Then he started screaming and crying. To this day, and that was 3 years ago, he don't even go near anything that's hot because he had to burn that hand himself to understand and recognize it's not good for me to touch this hot stove that Daddy told me not to touch. So while Jennifer did have to help me see that, it really wasn't helpful until I understood I'm making a mistake. That's all I'm saying.
But
But
to your point, though,
you're comparing a grown man to a 3-year-old boy.
That's
sorry.
so, Michael. But
You're comparing
I
a grown
agree
man.
with some of it. You do have to burn yourself sometimes, but you can't burn yourself. At some point, you're gonna be on fire, and we can't douse you. So I'm not gonna let you. And you pick me as your partner to not let you completely destroy yourself, not completely burn up. So yes, I agree with the fact that sometimes I have to just let you burn yourself, and you did burn yourself sometimes. But I think what Christina is saying, that you still have to acknowledge that we have a role as your partner to be there to make sure you don't set yourself on fire, because setting yourself on fire also sets the whole family on fire. And so it goes to knowing our roles, and then also the maturity level, like, and the way I presented it. Yeah, some things didn't help you, but I think a lot of times when I said stuff, it didn't necessarily help you because I presented it with crap. Like, I get it. My attitude was horrible. And so I think it's on both levels, and you have to take the good with the bad, but leadership is not just us just falling and us figuring out, because sometimes if you don't say anything, if you don't speak up, if you don't play your role, there is no coming back. Some things are unrepairable if you just keep going and you never see the stop sign. You never hear the voices. You just continually run into brick walls. And that's what you have partnerships for.
thank you so much. This has been phenomenal conversation. We are over our time. We are going to stop the live at this moment. We are going to continue this conversation, and then we're going to talk about our second topic. And that is going to go live on Facebook on Thursday at 8 p.m. on our page. If you have not already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe here on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Couples in Conversations. Super excited. This was great conversation, and we're going to continue and keep talking about it. Until next time, we'll have a great day.